All right, here he is, number 23, Jesus and Snakers. His airness, the GOAT, Michael Jordan, Michael Jordan, best player of all time in most people's opinion. But that's not so much what the video is about. I was just hearing some conversation about 50-point games and players that have scored 50, and it got me kind of curious. What's the list of all the players that have ever scored 50 points, all time in NBA history? And is scoring 50 points really, that crazy of an achievement? Because as the NBA has gone on, it's kind of been, I guess, been less and less value to have a 50-point game. Not to take away from it, it's still impressive when a player does score 50. SGA just did it not too long ago, and his performance was super impressive. So not to take away from the 50-point scores, but I have the list. I'm about to get to the list right now. Just shows all the people that have ever scored 50 plus points in their career, how many times they've done it. And then, you'd be surprised to see how many people have scored 50 at least one time in their career. Because I remember when I was growing up, Kobe was my favorite player. I'm a Spurs fan, so Tim Duncan was like my idol and my role model, but Kobe was my favorite player. It's kind of weird. I would just see Kobe doing the 360 dunks and crazy fadeaways and all this and that, and scoring all these crazy point totals. So I just look at Kobe and think, man, this guy's the most fun game to watch. His game was my favorite to watch. But if the Spurs and Lakers met in the playoffs, I'm always rooting for the Spurs. But anyway, when I was younger, I would see Kobe. He has 50 points, at least once every season, multiple 40-point games, and all these crazy performances. I'm 7, 8 years old growing up, kind of watching Kobe. And I'm thinking, this guy's the best player in the NBA. I don't know what a rebound is. I don't know what an assist is, blocks and steals. I don't know the impact defense plays, back then. I would see Kobe, guard players one on one and do a good job, doing defense one on one on players, but I don't know what team defense was. And I didn't care about all that when I was 7, 8 years old. I just saw, Kobe's dropping 50. This guy's a beast. He puts the ball in the bucket better than anybody else in the NBA, so he must be the best player in the NBA, in my opinion. But then after looking at the list, not to take away from Kobe or something, but you see how many players have scored 50 plus in the history of the NBA, and it's crazy how many different players it's been. And some of them aren't even, definitely aren't superstar players and aren't even star players. But it kind of just shows how much talent there is throughout the NBA. We'll get right to the games here. Real quick, I'm at a big 27 subscribers true. Trying to get to 30 by the end of the day, and YouTube said they'll send me a diamond ring. Up top, no surprise, Wilt Chamberlain is leading all the players. I don't think it's a surprise that Wilt has the most 50-point games. How many he has is stupid, though. He's had 118 50-point games. That's just ridiculous. Can't ever see anyone breaking his record, to be honest with you. I guess Wemby would be the guy that you might throw in there for the conversation, but I don't see that happening. 118 games, that's just insane. And then, second is Michael Jordan with only 31 games. I say only, that's still a bunch of 50-point games, but Wilt's just so far ahead of everyone. No one's ever going to catch Wilt. Kobe with 25, James Harden with 23, Elgin Baylor, Damian Lillard, Rick Barry, LeBron James, Steph Curry, Allen Iverson with 11. Just all legends. All legends in the top 10 there for the most 50-point games. Then you can just go through, kind of get through them. Once you get to 5, pretty much 5 and above, if you have 5 or more 50-point games in your career, at that point it's not a fluke. It's like this guy does this guy can score 50, not necessarily whenever he wants, but this guy's a really good scoring threat and just a really great player. There's at least 1 or 2 players in here where I wouldn't call them legends, but we'll get through it real quick. So 5 and up, these guys have had 50 plus points 5 times or more in their career. You got Tatum, Russell Westbrook. Bradley Beal's not a superstar or a legend, but he's there, so throw him in there. He's a really solid scorer. Anthony Davis, George Gervin, Jerry West, Kyrie, Adrian Dantley, Pistol Pete, Bob Pettit, Luca, Dominique Wilkins. I wouldn't consider Joel Embiid an NBA legend. I mean, probably once he retires, people are going to look and see, Embiid scored 70, was it 70, 71 points, whatever he scored in the game. They're going to look at a list just like I'm looking at a list right now. They'll probably look at the top scoring performances of all time, and Joel Embiid will be right there at number 3 or whatever it is with his performance. So, it's comment below if you think Joel Embiid is a legend by the time his career is over. I don't so much with his injury troubles, but his talent can't really be denied. Then you got Devin Booker, Bernard King, Giannis, Kevin Durant, Kareem. These are all the guys that have scored 50 points or more 5 times or more in their career. These are pretty much all legends. Devin Booker, I don't know if you consider Booker a legend, but we'll see how his numbers look at the end of his career. If he can somehow win a championship, I can at least put him in. I won't say one of the greatest scorers of all time, but maybe that next tier. The second tier of the greatest scorers of all time, because Devin Booker is a really, really good player. Then you get down, these are the guys where it's only been 4 times. So you got Larry Bird in there, Bob McAdoo, Moses Malone, T-Mac, Jamal Crawford, Melo, George Mikan, Tiny Archibald, Karl Malone, Klay Thompson. Comment below what you think. I don't think any of these guys aren't legends. These are all legends to me in that category. Then you get to the 3 times. David Robinson, Shaq, D. Wade, Tyrese Maxey, Jalen Brunson, SGA, Gilbert Arenas, Karl Anthony Towns. I wouldn't say these are all legends. A lot of them are. Tyrese Maxey and Jalen Brunson. Of course, I wouldn't call those guys legends right now. I wouldn't call SGA a legend. He's on the pace to be one in his career. He probably will end up being one. Just a little early, though. I definitely wouldn't call Gilbert Arenas a legend. Comment below what you think. I liked Gilbert's game a lot when I was younger. Just nasty 3-ball. He would do the hibachi crossover, which was nasty to watch. He had like his own signature crossover move. Yeah, Gilbert was super fun to watch. I would say he's a star player, but he wasn't a superstar player. I'll get down to it here. We'll come back to Gilbert in a second here. Then you get to the 2-time guys. Look at all these 2s. I'm not going to get through all of them, but this is 25. It's rows of 25, so this is 25 different guys that have all scored 52 times or more. There's a couple more up here. I'll just go through a few of them. Big O, Elvin Hayes, those are legends. Kiki Vandeweghe, Patrick Ewing, Jamal Mashburn, Allen Houston, C.J. McCollum, Trae Young, Jokic, Jamal Murray, Zach LaVine, scored 50 twice, DeMar DeRozan, George Yardley. Forgive me, these guys are kind of recognize the name, but those guys are probably a little bit before my time, so please forgive me. Hakeem, Alex English, of course, is a legend, Vince Carter, Antoine Jamison, shout out. Who remembers Antoine Jamison from the Wizards? Jamison was a solid player, but again, you see stuff like this. He scored 50 points twice. I guess you could comment below what you think. I guess you could call Antoine Jamison a star, but he would play with Gilbert Arenas back then, so Gilbert was getting most of the shine. I'd have to look back, but he probably scored his 50-point games when Gilbert was hurt or when he wasn't playing with Gilbert Arenas. But shout out to Jamison. This is kind of what I'm making an example of, though. Players can score 50 points. He had 2 50-plus points games in his career, and I personally wouldn't consider Antoine even a star. Definitely not a superstar. Not to hate on Antoine Jamison, but again, comment below what you think about Antoine on there. Got Dirk Nowitzki, Anthony Edwards. He's not a legend, but again, he's on the trajectory. He's just such a young player. Michael Redd. Shout out to Michael Redd. He had the nasty slingshot, lefty 3-point shot, jump shot. I wouldn't call Michael Redd a superstar. There was a time when I would say he was a star. He was pretty much the number 1 option on his team for a while. You got Kemba Walker, Jimmy Butler, DeMarcus Cousins, Tom Chambers, and Purvis Short. I've heard of Tom Chambers. Purvis Short's probably back in the day. I don't so much remember his name, but you see Kemba, Jimmy Butler, DeMarcus Cousins. They both have at least 2 50-point games. We'll adjust the 2, no more than 2. But you see Kemba, Jimmy Butler, DeMarcus Cousins. You can call all those players stars. There may have been a time when you call Jimmy a superstar. When he's dragging his team deep into the playoffs, when he dragged Miami all the way to the finals. You could call him a star at that time, or even a superstar. But DeMarcus Cousins, Michael Redd, Kemba Walker, just solid players, talented scorers. But the point I'm kind of making is you can score 50 without necessarily being a superstar or even a star player. All right, here's all the players that have done it at least once. I'm not going to go through every single name, but these lists are 25 players long, so 25. Here's 25 more, so that's 50 players. Then 25 more right here, so that's 75 players. If you count this last list, it's actually only 21, so 96 players in NBA history that have scored 50 points, at least one or more games. I keep saying one or more, just one games. They would have been up top if they had scored it more than once. But again, these are all the guys that have scored 50 points just once in their career. I'm not gonna go through every single name. I'll just go through some people that catch my eye. But you'll see, you don't have to be a superstar talent or even a star talent to to catch on fire and have that 150-point game. Clyde Drexler down here, he's a legend in the game. He only had one 50-point game. Nick Anderson, if you remember Nick Anderson, he played on the Rockets early, like mid to early 2000s. He had a wet three ball. He was like a 6'10" stretch power forward. He had one 50-point game. Not a star, not a superstar. I'm gonna come back around to this. I'm not just hating on all these role players, but I'll come back around to my point in a second. Jim Jackson, he was solid. Cedric Ceballos, that's crazy. Alonzo Mourning had a 50-point game. He had one 50-point game. He was known for being like a shot blocker. That's crazy. Alonzo had one. Stephon Marbury had one. I'm not so surprised about that. He was a really talented scorer. Rashard Lewis, Amari Stoudemire had one. I consider Paul Pierce a legend, but he only had one. Kevin Martin was cold on Sacramento. He only had one. Lou Williams had one. Blake Griffin, Derrick Rose, Eric Gordon all had one. Lou Williams, Eric Gordon. Lou Williams and Eric Gordon were just really good six men for a lot of time in their career. I think Eric Gordon eventually got a starting role, but again, just more non-superstar players that have gotten that 50-point mark. Even Kevin Porter Jr. had one. Jaylen Brown, Malachi Flynn, I forgot he had one. That wasn't too long ago. Paulo Banchero, Wembanyama had one. LaMelo Ball, Spencer Haywood. I think he played with Gilbert Arenas on the Wizards as well. He wasn't even known for being a scorer at all. That's crazy. He had a 50-point game. Vernon Maxwell, Chris Webber, Rip Hamilton had one. Rip was known for being more of a defender. He had a nice mid-range jumper. Kevin Love, Terrence Ross. Remember Terrence Ross when he was on the Raptors. Corey Brewer has one. Chris Middleton, Karis LeVert, Drew Holiday had one. Notice some of these names I'm not even reading. Like, they're probably older players, so I just don't remember the era. But all sorts of players. Again, 96 players that have had one 50-point game in NBA history. Brandon Roy had one. Shout out to Brandon Roy. Mo Williams, again, not a star player. He would play in Cleveland with LeBron, and he was a good second option to LeBron. Isaiah Thomas has one. John Wall, rather. D'Angelo Russell has one. We'll come back to D'Angelo in a second here. John Morant, Pascal Siakam, Willis Reed, Tim Duncan just has the one. Best power forward of all time. This shows how my mindset has changed. Like I said earlier, when I was younger, it was just, man, Kobe has 30, 50-point games. Kobe's scoring 40 points every single week. This guy's the best player in the league in my mindset, my 8-year-old mindset. Like, this guy, this guy's the most fun to watch. He puts on a show, Los Angeles style. But then you see her down here, Tim Duncan only had one 50-point game in his entire career, and it doesn't even matter. He's the best power forward of all time. It's not, of course I know today, but it's not all about scoring in basketball. And this list kind of shows you that. Damon Stoudemire, Ray Allen had one. Jermaine O'Neal, Tony Parker. There's Brandon Jennings. I'm going to come back to Brandon Jennings as well in a second here. Kevin McHale, LaMarcus Aldridge. See, Jerry Stackhouse, he was not a star player. He was just a solid role player for the Mavericks. That was probably earlier in his career, though. De'Aaron Fox has one. Donovan Mitchell. Remember David Thompson? He could put the ball right here in his arm. He would jump over the rim, get his head over the rim and just pop it in. He had crazy hops for David Thompson. But anyway, what I'm basically saying is a lot of these names, shout out to Darren Williams as well. I would consider Darren Williams was at least a star in his time, maybe not a superstar. But point is, you go through these names, you see a lot of these guys were never even stars in the NBA, let alone superstars. So I'm not saying 50-point games are easier today. Comment below what you think on that. The floor is more spaced out. People make the argument, players just don't play defense today. Players are just lazy. They're not playing any defense. It's not that they're not trying. The floor is just so spaced out that you can't cover like this much space on the floor. You can't cover 2 or 3 guys at once. The offense is just so much better. The floor is so much more spaced out. 3-point shooters are just so much better. You have to stay on your man. You can't run around and help as much. It's not where there's, 3, 4 guys just clogged around the paint and you can just help out on this guy and this guy. You watch games and I guess it kind of seems like they're not putting as much effort as before, just optically, I guess. But if you are watching the games, it's not so much an effort thing. It's more how much the floor is spaced out these days. Yeah, we'll come back. All right. One thing I wanted to show. All right, here's D'Angelo Russell. He had the 150 plus point game. Here's Brandon Jennings. He had the 150 plus point game. What kind of brought me to make the video, I was watching, it was Brandon Jennings on Jeff Teague's podcast. This was a few months ago, but I just watched the video. They were talking about his 55 point game when he was a rookie on Milwaukee. Let me know if you remember the game, but he scored 55 points his rookie season on the Milwaukee Bucks. Then Brandon Jennings was a really promising high school player coming out as well. He played overseas, skipped college, and came in and played in the NBA. When I saw him score 55 points as a rookie, I was still younger, however old I was, 10 years old back then, whatever. And I was thinking in my 10-year-old mind, man, 50 plus points, this guy's a raw basketball player. This guy's going to be a superstar. And that was his only 50-point game he had his whole career. And they were talking on Jeff Teague's podcast and on Gil's Arena as well. I was a fan of Brandon Jennings. I was a fan of Gilbert Arenas, so I'm not hating on them as basketball players. But on the podcast, it's crazy how, these low volume, not role players. I guess you could call Brandon Jennings a star. You could call Gilbert Arenas, I don't know if you call Brandon Jennings a star, but at least a solid starter. And then you call Gilbert Arenas a star when he was in his prime. But it's crazy how the way they look back at their careers. Because on Jeff Teague's podcast, Brandon Jennings was saying, I don't know if they asked him, but basically, how many points you think you would put up in the NBA today? 28 points per game, easy. Bro never averaged over 20 points in his whole career. Dude never shot over 43% from the field in his whole career. So again, I was a big fan of Brandon Jennings. He'd catch on fire at times. Obviously, he had the 55-point game, so he can catch on fire. Just like D'Angelo Russell had 150-plus point game. He can catch on fire as well. I think D'Angelo Russell is the comparison for Brandon Jennings for what he would be in today's NBA. He'd be like a D'Angelo Russell type of player. Comment below if you have a better comparison or if you don't agree with that comparison. Not just because they're both left-handed. I mean, I guess that makes the comparison easier, but just their play styles, just low basketball IQ, talented scorers, but low basketball IQ, low efficiency, and just explosive players that can score a bunch of points. But then it's just so weird, how Brandon Jennings looks back at himself in the NBA and how Gilbert Arenas looks back at himself in the NBA. Because so fast on Jeff Teague's podcast, Brandon Jennings, I'd be dropping 28 points per game in today's NBA. These boys are soft. And like he was calling Jason Tatum soft in the other podcast. I don't know what he thinks about himself. Like, bro, you are not Jason Tatum. Like, Jason Tatum scoring 27 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, whatever Tatum's averaging. And then Jennings hates, oh, you're so soft. Tatum's soft. And then to say you'd average 28 points per game in the NBA, like, bro, you're not a superstar. You're not JT. Your comparison would be D'Angelo Russell, in my opinion. And just coming back to the 50-point list, I'd seen that podcast with Jeff Teague. Again, it's months old by now, but Brandon Jennings, he said, well, I scored 28 points per game, easy. That would be my average. It's like, bro, no, you would not. There's only so many players scoring 25 points or more, and you would not be one of them. Even back in the day, back in your NBA, you never had one season where you scored over 20-plus points a game. You're averaging 42% from the field, like inefficient scorer, not giving you defense or anything else to make up for the nights when he's not scoring. Just like D'Angelo Russell. It's not to hate on the guys. They're both just scorers. That's all your team is really looking for you to do is score the ball. But Brandon Jennings, you're not a 28 points per game guy. Like, I feel like on Gilbert's podcast, Gilbert Arenas and Brandon Jennings, and just a lot of the guys, they just try to say the wildest stuff they can. So people like me end up making a video like this, and then y'all see the video, and then maybe y'all make a video, or you tell your friends about what Brandon Jennings said, and now it's just more and more eyes on those players. But they seem so serious when they talk about it. Just wanted to go over the list, though. 96 different players that have scored 50 points once in their NBA career. And again, you see as you're going through this list, it's not like a lot of these guys aren't superstars. a handful of these guys aren't even weren't even star players, but they still hit the 50 points. But comment below what you think. I just think it's weird how how Gilbert Arenas, Brandon Jennings, and these guys, they look back at the NBA like their age and they say, man, if I was playing today, I'd be putting up all these points. I'd be averaging 28 points per game in today's NBA. I haven't heard Gilbert say that, but I imagine he'd probably think he'd average 25 points plus, and maybe Arenas would. Gilbert was a pretty skilled player, but just so funny. It annoys me how they're just the old school players. Let's find a good example. Chris Webber, he had his 150 point game. He's a good example. Um, I know Tim Duncan. Yeah, Tim Duncan was on here. I don't have to find all of them. Ray Allen's on here. But these guys that sacrificed to make the NBA what it was for people like, Gilbert Arenas and Brandon Jennings to come in, make all the money they made. It's not as much as the players today, but it was more than, Tim Duncan and these dudes were making. And the players before Tim Duncan and those guys, they made all these sacrifices for Duncan to be where he is, Duncan Kobe era. Then you move on to LeBron era, and then people like Gilbert Arenas, Brandon Jennings are just bashing on the game today, honestly, where back in the day, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, those type of guys, they would just praise the game. Oscar Robertson, Big O, they would just praise the game and praise the game. Even today, they're retired from the game and they'll make criticisms, but they still try to praise the game overall. And then there's players like these guys that'll come onto the podcast and just say stuff like that to bash the game. Brandon Jennings even said, "Oh man, they're lucky we didn't grow up these days. We wouldn't even have needed the NBA. Like we don't even need the NBA. We can just go out and advertise ourselves on social media and things like this, and just be able to, I guess, make a living and make money that way." I understand what he's saying because Brandon Jennings was really big in high school. So yes, there are guys like they get the NIL money in college. So Brandon Jennings probably could have went to college, made millions in NIL money, and been set for life. So from that perspective, I get what he's saying there. But if he didn't go to the NBA, he wouldn't be on Gilbert Arenas' podcast. I wouldn't know who he is. And it's like I get what he's saying though, as far as just be some AAU highlight player, become viral on social media, make millions of dollars off social media, maybe make it to college and make millions from your NIL money, and then I mean, if you get to the NBA and bust, like who cares? You're probably not even hungry anymore. Like you make it to the NBA and you're already worth, $10 million or whatever it is for some of these higher up players. And that's when it comes down to who really loves basketball and who really loves just what the game provides for them. Yeah, just get back on subject. 96 different players that scored 50 points one time in their career. And comment below what you think. I just think it's crazy for Brandon Jennings to think he would average 28 points per game in today's NBA, and it's just crazy how these Brandon Jennings, I wouldn't even call him a star player. Comment below what you think. Gilbert Arenas, I don't think he was a superstar. He can call himself a star at least, but it's crazy how they look back at their era, they look at this era and think they would just plug themselves in and just be some superstar player when they never were even a superstar player in their era. And then they just bash the NBA more, and it's just the never-ending cycle of the media, the players, and the fans just all bashing the NBA, and then no one can ever take any accountability for it. I wish everyone would just say, wish the media would just say, okay, it's 33% my fault, and the fans would say, okay, it's 33% our fault, and then the players would also say it's okay, it's 33% our fault. No one has to take all the blame. Just everyone acknowledge there's like an overall, the product be made better overall, and then everyone just just do your part. The main thing, what I think the main thing is, it's equal blame, but the main thing is all the negative talk. All the negative talk in the media leaks into the fans and leaks into the NBA, and then the players are talking negative about the media, and just back and forth, just a never-ending circle of negativity around the NBA. But yeah, let me know what you think about all these players that have scored, the 96 players that have scored 50 one time in their career, because I didn't think it would be that many people. It's kind of eye-opening, honestly. But yeah, please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video as well. I'm at the big 27 subscribers, trying to get to the 30 if I can. So thank you for watching. We'll see y'all next time.